Hello, and welcome to a brand spanking new, yes, you heard me right, a brand spanking new episode of the Moaning Show. It's been about a year since the previous one, and my failed attempt to have a live moaning show where people would just send me comments and everything over the internet wasn't all that great, and it's been a long while since I've had the motivation to host one of these. My name is HED01 and I'll be talking to you this time about Brexit. Now, if you watched the previous video about a year ago, I did briefly touch on the subject in a long list of details and, you know, just bits and bobs about the Brexit deal and agreements and everything. And this time, obviously, it's the Moaning Show. I haven't done that much research. I have my phone on me and I've brought up the Wikipedia page about Brexit. But first, before we kick off, let me explain what's happened to me in 2019. And one of the reasons why I'm producing this video is, at the moment at least, I have quite a bit of free time on my hands. In February of this year, I went into hospital for about 6.5 weeks with an abscess and septicemia, or sepsis, which basically meant I had no clue even what my name was. My mum suffered from it occasionally as well, and now I know what she goes through. But more on that in another Moaning Show coming soon. But anyway, this one is about Brexit, and to kick it all off, we were told about Brexit, or the potential for a Brexit, Britain leaving the European Union. That's what it's all about. And we were told that we would have a referendum on the 23rd of June 2016. Now, I'm recording this on the 3rd of June 2019. The ridiculous thing is, the bloody ridiculous thing is, it's been 3 years, or almost 3 years, since that referendum took place. Now, I was fucking bored of all this Brexit bullshit even before the vote took place. And you have political comedy programs like Have I Got News For You, Mock the Week, for example, and just in general comedians that, you know, just have this attitude towards Brexit as if to say, oh, it's a load of shit, it's a load of crap, you know, it's not good for business or whatever. That's one way to look at it. Now, with regards to the actual Brexit, you know, the Leave campaign, you know, or the Remain campaign, you have to take into consideration that these are people's opinions, thoughts and ideas about a certain thing, and that's what the Moaning Show is all about. But to kick it off, like I say, I was bored shitless of the fucking constant daily news leading up to the Brexit vote, or the referendum itself, almost 3 years ago. And I will tell you right now that I voted for Leave. And two of the things that may influence my decision was the fact that I thought that the NHS would get some more money. Clearly that has led to other things very recently in the news, and I'll come back to that later. But another thing that I think that Britain would benefit from is the regain of control of our waters in terms of fishing and all sorts of things like that. You know, we would control our own like borders. We would control our own, what's the word I'm looking for? Just farming and all sorts of business deals like that. The Leave campaign, or the people behind the Leave campaign, were people like Boris Johnson and other individuals like that, people like Nigel Farage, like UKIP, and the interesting thing there, and I'll come back to them later on, is just the simple fact that the majority of those people are politicians. And again, something I'll come back to later. The Win campaign, or the winning campaign should I say, won by 51.9%. So in other words, you round it up to 52. So in other words, 52% of people voted in this country to leave. Which also means that the unsuccessful campaign was by a margin of 48.1%. In other words, 48%. Which isn't a lot if you think about it. There isn't a lot of difference. Enough people voted to remain in the European Union, and enough people voted, or more than that amount, obviously, voted to leave the European Union, regardless of their beliefs, or regardless of what was told and what was actually correct by either campaign. Now, the whole ridiculous point about all of this is the fact that 3 years later, at this time, we were supposed to have left the European Union according to this Article 50 bullshit that was announced, which was supposed to trigger the UK leaving the EU by, according to my data here, my phone in other words, on the 29th of March 2019. That was nearly 2 months ago. Pathetic. Regardless of whether or not you were a leave or a remain. And our leaving procedure, or whatever you want to call it, has been taken care of by politicians. That's our first mistake. We had inwards of 3 years, the best part of 3 fucking years, right, to get all of this sorted. And nearly every fucking day, the infuriating thing is it's the first piece of news every single fucking day. It drives me insane. Brexit negotiations today have reached a point of no return. Every single day. There's no other news in this world, or in the UK, than Brexit. And to say I was bored before the actual referendum was something, but after the referendum, holy fucking shit. More and more and more coverage has been devoted to this thing, and the reason it bores me to death is because, yeah, it's got very little to do with the average Joe in the public. We went out and voted, the public voted for leave. Let's leave. I myself voted to leave. There are pros and cons for both sides. It's perfectly reasonable. But the worst thing at the moment for me is the fact that it's still going on. 29th of March 2019 was the day that the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland was supposed to leave the European Union. And there's reasons like it hasn't happened, but the main reason it hasn't happened is because the leave or the withdrawal of the UK to leave those bastards in the EU has been made by politicians and not businessmen, business leaders like Alan Sugar and, you know, like the CEOs of companies like Vodafone and EE and other leading UK companies. You know, people like that should have handled this so-called deal, so to speak. Now, there is a looming threat of what's called a no deal, where the UK leaves without having secured business partnerships with other European countries and things like that. And it's clear and fucking obvious that the UK politicians, people that, I say people in the broadest possible pissing terms, anyway, the whole point of politicians is to be complete and total anal arseholes, you know what I mean? Not many people like them, if you see what I mean. Now, the worst thing about these politicians is you can quite clearly see that they do not want to leave the European Union. For whatever reason, it's probably financial based, you know, money based, and it's not in their best interest, in their careers or their jobs or whatever, to leave the European Union. There's probably very little benefit for them. Because if the politicians did want to leave the European Union, Article 50 or whatever the fuck all this bullshit is would have been followed through. We would have left the European Union by now and we would be governing our own country, rather than some twat in a blazer or some bastards in a blazer and nice dresses and all fucking noses up in the air looking down on us, you know what I mean? In Brussels going, no, we don't want to let them have their own power, you know, they must do this, they must do that. Fuck off! Fuck off! You've never met me, you don't know me, I've never met you, quite frankly. You know, and you're not gonna get any sympathy out of me for anyone in Brussels who is a member of this European Parliament, or, you know, the higher ups in the European Parliament saying Britain must do this to secure a Brexit deal. Fuck you! 150 billion% fuck you! Have you ever even stepped foot in the UK? Much less, you know, lived here for a bit to see what the conditions are like. You know, to say, oh yes, you know, you must do this way, otherwise you'll get a no deal. Fuck you and your pissing shitty deals. All we want to do as leavers or Brexiteers is just say, right, you're saying this is how we do stuff. We're not doing it your way anymore. You tell us how many fish we can catch on a single trawler or whatever you fucking want to call the boats or whatever, and you can't do fuck all. Our fishermen can't catch what they need to catch to remain fishermen, which is why you get so many pricks and arseholes. You know, it's like they can't put food on the table, they can't support their families. You know, it's fucking stupid. It really is fucking stupid. But these politicians, they don't give a shit. They don't give a flying fuck. You know, it's... all they do is, you know, just play the blooming game of, like, procrastinating, letting things linger on, and that's why this fucking Brexit bullshit hasn't happened. I go back to my phone, right? I go back to my phone, and the deadline to leave the EU has now been extended to the 31st of October. Fucking Halloween! Some irony there, isn't there? and we won't leave then either. This isn't a so-called passionate rant from someone who wants to leave the EU. This is someone who's fucking frustrated about all of this bullshit taking longer than it should have taken. If we're going to leave, let's leave. If we're going to stay, let's stay. Let's end this bullshit. I am bored shitless of Brexit this, Brexit that. People wanting to stay, people wanting to leave. I couldn't give a fuck anymore. Quite frankly, despite what you've heard me say in the last few minutes. If our politicians can't be bothered to pull their fingers out their arses and sort out, you know, a leaving so-called deal, then bollocks to it. There's this bollocks to Brexit thing that's going on. And, you know, from a person who voted leave, I'm well with that, to be honest. Fuck Brexit. Fuck it. You know, it's frustrating to say the pissing least, you know. And the absolute worst thing is, probably years from now, you know, will be this independent island of the dregs of humanity that won't ever fucking say anything. Because we're not either in the EU or because we haven't got any fucking powers. The worst thing, the absolute worst thing is that, you know, we're being made a laughing stock of so-called European politics, or world politics even. Because there are, you know, we fucked this up big time. And it's not us that's fucked it up. It's the, like I keep on saying, the politicians, the high business leaders that have no intention whatsoever of leaving, you know, the comfort zone that they're in. Politicians couldn't give a shit. There were very recently European elections in this country, and the vast majority of these European elections were won, or the seats in the European Parliament were won by the Brexit Party. Now that says to me that the British public are still wanting to leave as a whole because they voted for the Brexit Party. Now, I myself didn't vote in the European elections. I've told you why before. You know, I'm not as physically able as I used to be. My strength is improving, but that's neither here nor there, and a subject for another video at another time. But needless to say, I could have voted online on my computer, which is to the right of me. But again, what's the fucking point? And that's probably what a lot of people thought when contemplating whether to vote in these European elections. We vote in these European elections, okay? And this Brexit Party, their one policy is to make sure Brexit goes through, or to ensure a so-called smoother Brexit, a hard or easy Brexit. Whatever fucking Brexit, you know. Bollocks. And that's all that this thing is. It's been a load of bollocks. The absolute bewildering thing is that this referendum was suggested by a Conservative leader, in other words the Prime Minister at the time, David Cameron. The votes came in, the results came in, and he resigned. He was gone less than a month later, putting the Prime Minister at the time of recording of this video in a no-win situation as far as what's happened to her, Theresa May, has happened. A no-win situation where she has faced votes of no confidence in terms of other politicians from opposing parties, and, you know, in other words, people not on her bloody side, saying she's not fit to lead her party and not hence fit to lead the government and lead the people. And she only just won those votes, you know, by say 40 votes or something, you know, so she survived just barely. But even she's resigned now, scheduled to leave, I think, at the end of this week, on Friday the 7th of June. And so, in other words, all of this bullshit, since the Brexit vote was, or not Brexit vote, the EU referendum to either leave or remain, has not gone the way that 2 prime ministers have anticipated. 2 of them. This crap has cost Britain 2 prime ministers. They've resigned, not to mention the amount of like foreign secretaries or home secretaries that have just looked at the pile of shit that has built up, and to basically mention that the fact that everything, nearly everything, has fucked up since this vote went through. 2 prime ministers, countless secretaries, you know, countless people that have been in charge of the so-called process of leaving the EU. It's all been a gigantic clusterfuck. And until we get a definitive answer one way or another, I'm going to be pissed off to the nines, because all we've got is, you know, a country that hasn't got a clue what it's doing as far as its politicians is concerned. The Brexit deal would have been all sorted out had it been left to either business leaders or perhaps even the people themselves. Get a person who's, you know, all to do with, you know, I'm not talking me or the average Joe on the street. I'm talking about someone who knows what they're talking about, wants to get the deal actually done in the first place, because politicians up to this point couldn't give a fuck, and that is obvious, you know. So it's just going to be up and down until either we do actually decide to leave and we get the deal done, if a deal is possible, or it's just, we're just going to remain in the EU with our tail between our legs and say, sorry, we didn't mean to. Hold your hand, mummy. That's what it's going to be. And it's annoying as fuck. Every single news broadcast on any channel, it's just been like, Brexit news first before anything else. Fuck Brexit. Have that at the end of the fucking broadcast. It bores the shit out of me. I don't know about you. What are your thoughts? You know, write down comments and, you know, maybe even post a reply video if you've got the technology to do so. But anyway, that's about it for this edition of the Moaning Show. I hope that I've not bored you to death too badly. I do have some more videos lined up in the future, but one thing that is coming is episode 50. That's in a few editions time. I'm not going to say in a few weeks, because I may not be able to record one of these videos a week. But what I will say is that I'm looking for suggestions and comments in the video, either on Facebook. The majority of people watching this actually know me, so but anyway, comments and suggestions on underneath the video here, if you can, for things you would like to see on episode 50. Episode 50 I'm going to leave for a viewer suggestion video. The more viewer suggestions I get, I might turn it into a mini moans, which you've seen on the channel, and if you haven't, just go through the channel as the channel's history, go through all the PlayStation streaming videos that I've done, and leave me comments and suggestions about what you would like to moan at on episode 50, which is coming soon. So I thank you very much for watching. I hope I've not pissed you off too much or bored you too much, and I'll see you next time for more faffs, fucks and moans. See you later.